Renegades and Loyalists, welcome to hour zero of a new chapter in my hobby journey. This is part one of a series of videos documenting my design process from paper to plastic for a Chaos Terminator Lord. Despite featuring a good range of customization and personality, Games Workshop's 2006 model is beginning to show its age, with a lack of sharper details and a few questionable design choices. And so I find myself at the bench of heresy, giving this model a much needed overhaul. Before you is a 1:4 scale drawing of my Demon Bolter. Based on a sternguard veteran pattern, I plan on making several modifications to alter this weapon's alignment well into the realms of chaos. I'll start removing some existing details. This is an important step in managing the overall noise, as excessive details will make the model too busy and less readable. I've come to recognise this process as the clean slate approach, which Valbjorn covers extensively across his ever-ambitious Space Wolf conversions. I'm using a Tamiya flat file to grind down the greeblings, and my left hand guides the file to avoid details I want to retain. You'll see initially I tried to preserve this rectangle on the gun rail, but ultimately decide to file it flat. Going slow with this process will allow you to make decisions like these with more confidence. Akin to the original model, this Terminator will be effortlessly wielding his demon weapon with one arm. I'll need to reconstruct the foregrip, and so I remove some material with cutters, then begin reshaping with a flat file. Next, foul marks of the Imperium are defaced with a saw and chisel. The saw reduces the profile of the icon enough for a chisel to neatly remove remaining plastic. Gently push the chisel in a slight upwards direction to prevent digging in and marring of the surface. 3M and Tamiya sanding sponges make quick smooth work of achieving a final finish. However, be aware that excessive sanding on hard surfaces will turn them organic. In contrast, overly sharp edges can look out of scale. Managing your model surfaces this way will pay off in the painting phase, providing clear distinction between elements. Detail loss from removing the hand is rebuilt with a push broach. It's typically used in Gundam kits and scale model vehicles for adding physical panel lining. I've opted for a 0.1mm bit, going slow and watching how it interacts with the plastic. All the edges of the bit have been machined to a sharp edge, allowing it to cut and carve from multiple angles. I'm dragging the tool with moderate pressure in the opposite direction of the point, reinforcing the panel segments and even adding some new ones here despite me likely sculpting over this area later. The last stage before building is the barrel holes. Using the mould line as a centre point, I pilot 2 holes with a scoring bit. Details of the barrels are on screen now. I'll start with a smaller bit and work up to the final size. This allows me some error which I can correct as I go. I'm starting off rebuilding the barrels in brass. Most of the metal I use is from Albion alloys, available in both metric and freedom units, and offer a wide range of sizes with several alloys to choose from. Of course, being a homebrew army, I want something a little different from the standard melta pattern. To help me along with this precision task, I'm using a drill press, which I've been modifying for some time now. Here I'm forming the melta heatsink. Start with 3 holes for the basic vents, rotate the tube 90 degrees and cut some tapered oval inserts into the sides. This was a new level of precision for me, so it took several attempts to get right, but from here it's just straight cuts, squaring off ends and some finishing details. It's time to dial in and start building out the corruption and various other fine details. As far back as the initial sketches, my intention was to create a weapon possessed by a lesser demon. I aim to portray this through various organic extensions, demonic faces, and the suggestion of living metal. I'm using a spin mold here which helps to create a circular cutout perfect for setting up depth, and in this case, seating an eyeball into the weapon casing. A quick wipe down with pure isoalcohol will increase epoxy adhesion. Though similar to milliput, magic putty is less porous, therefore slower to dissolve with water, is faster to cure, and uses a finer resin compound. When mixed with Tamiya QuickType, it also gains a sticky, chewy quality, improving adhesion and stretchiness, while still curing rock hard. The eyeball is punched out from pewter using a ball stylus. The silicon backer here is crucial in forming the hemispherical profile, as it pushes the soft metal to conform to the ball. I frequently use bamboo toothpicks for a myriad of tasks. In the case of sculpting, I refine them with sandpaper first to create the exact tooltip needed for the job. Bamboo takes a point extremely well. It doesn't fray and holds moisture for prolonged periods with no degradation as seen with cheaper wood picks. I also recommend a dedicated sable brush for manipulating tiny details and general sculpting. In the case of milliput and other higher porosity resins, a brush can be used for softening and blending. A general principle of two-part epoxies: the marks and impressions you make with your tools become more localized as it hardens. In other words, the harder the putty gets, the more force you can apply without completely deforming the surrounding material. Having an awareness of how epoxy's properties shift as they cure, and using this to one's advantage, has proven a vital step in advancing my sculpting ability. This hard, bony appearance, you can see, was achieved by working and compressing the putty well into the 100-minute mark. Our second mix is for the foregrip. I decided to keep the bone theme going by creating something resembling vertebrae. Again, focusing on the general shape, but more importantly in this case, symmetry. Here's an updated sketch of our bolter. As I continued to work on this weapon, my end vision evolved and decided the chainsword was not going to work compositionally. This is often a gut feeling, and I encourage you to tune into this with your own projects. Same principles as before. As the putty begins to cure, I can refine the shapes further and simulate a harder surface. I regularly stop and check the overall shape and symmetry. This is good practice for avoiding tunnel vision. Take a few seconds to observe the object as a whole. Is there more material on one side than the other? Does anything look out of place? Have you become so focused on one part that your finger has mushed an uncured area? Mix number 3 is for the teeth. Taking a very small bead of putty, I roll one end with my fingers to form a teardrop, then seat it in place using a sable brush. This process is very similar for the fine detailing on the foregrip as seen in our sketch. I use a small amount of slip to help with adhesion and blending. Slip is essentially a slurry made from soluble putty dissolved in water. With a damp brush, I erode away any fingerprints and sharpen the teeth by dragging the brush towards the points. Now observe this detail cut from a spare venom crawler cannon. As many of you may know, polycement works by dissolving and welding the parts together. In the early stages of this chemical process, a plastic film begins to form. If disturbed, it creates a rippled skin effect, which achieves a look of sentience and living metal. Similar to how we formed the Chaos Eye previously, I'm using a much smaller bit to punch out some 0.4mm rivets. These will be used on the foregrip and the hand as well for the classic pre-Hersey armour design. To manipulate the rivets, use a toothpick dampened with water, or if you're feeling the great unclean ones embrace, slivers can work well too. We're coming to the end of manufacturing this weapon. Chainsword, while an iconic item of 40k, didn't quite fit the narrative of my own army, and after some trial and error I settled on using an underslung plague knife instead. I've shaped some finger slots into the blade, suggesting this weapon's brutal melee capability. This has quickly become my favourite CA formula. The black rubber compound gives some flex to an otherwise brittle adhesive and allows you to see exactly where it's going. From here I sculpted in some GWP to secure the blade and continue the theme of the weapon's sentient form. This concludes part 1 of my Terminator build. In part 2 of Weapons of the Warp, I'll be concentrating on my army's version of a power claw known as the Soul Talon. We'll delve deeper into machining techniques with brass to create intricate exposed wiring and piston mechanisms. And so I encourage you, when the time comes for the warp to open once more, you stay a while and listen.